My name is Matilda Jameson, and I am 65 years old, and I need to tell you how my world shattered in a single night. But before I get to that moment, the moment when everything I thought I knew about my family crumbled into dust, I need to take you back. I need you to understand who I was, what I built, and why what happened to me felt like a knife twisting in my chest every single day. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the youngest of 4 children. My father worked at the steel mill, and my mother cleaned houses to make ends meet. We didn't have much, but we had love. We had integrity. My parents taught me that your word was your bond, that family was everything, and that you worked hard for what you had. Those lessons became the foundation of my entire life. I met my husband, Gabriel, when I was just 19 years old. He was 22, fresh out of college with a business degree and dreams bigger than the sky. We fell in love fast and hard, the kind of love that makes you believe anything is possible. We got married 6 months later in a tiny church ceremony with maybe 30 people in attendance. My dress was borrowed, his suit was the only one he owned, and we couldn't afford a honeymoon. But God, we were happy. Gabriel started working for a manufacturing company, and I took a job as a secretary at a law firm. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment that had cockroaches and a radiator that barely worked in winter, but we didn't care. We were building something. We were building us. 3 years into our marriage, I got pregnant with our daughter, Laura. I remember the day I told Gabriel. He picked me up and spun me around our cramped little kitchen until I was dizzy and laughing. We both cried that night, holding each other, imagining the family we were going to create. Laura was born on a Tuesday morning in May, and she was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and the loudest cry the nurses said they'd heard all week. I held her in my arms and made a promise to her right then and there. I would protect her, I would love her, and I would give her a better life than I had. That promise became my purpose. Gabriel worked his way up in his company while I stayed home with Laura. Money was still tight, but we managed. We saved every penny we could. Gabriel took on extra projects, worked weekends, missed birthdays and holidays. I took in sewing work from home, hemming pants, and fixing dresses for neighbors. We sacrificed everything for our dream, to own our own home, to give Laura stability. When Laura was 7, we finally did it. We bought a house. It wasn't much, a small 3-bedroom ranch in a decent neighborhood, but it was ours. I cried when we got the keys. I stood in the empty living room with tears streaming down my face because I couldn't believe we'd actually done it. This house represented every sacrifice, every missed meal, every late night. It was proof that hard work meant something. We poured our lives into that house. Gabriel added a deck in the backyard. I planted a garden. We painted every room together, arguing about colors and laughing at the paint in each other's hair. Laura grew up in that house. We marked her height on the doorframe in the kitchen every birthday. We celebrated every milestone there, her first day of school, her first lost tooth, her high school graduation. Gabriel and I grew old together in that house. We had our fights, like any couple, but we always came back to each other. He was my best friend, my partner, my everything. When he got sick, pancreatic cancer, they said, I nursed him in our bedroom for 8 months. I watched the strongest man I'd ever known waste away to nothing. He died in our bed, holding my hand, telling me he loved me with his last breath. That was 5 years ago, and I swear to you, I've felt his absence every single day since. The house felt too big without him, too quiet. But I couldn't leave. This house was Gabriel. It was us. It was everything we'd built together. Laura had gotten married by then to a man named Austin. I'll be honest, I never liked Austin. There was something about him that felt slippery, like he was always calculating, always looking for an angle. But Laura loved him, and I'd learned long ago that you can't choose who your children fall in love with. So I kept my mouth shut and tried to be supportive. They'd been living in an apartment across town, struggling financially. Austin worked in sales but never seemed to keep a job for long. Laura worked as a receptionist at a dental office, barely making enough to cover their rent. After Gabriel died, after I spent months alone in that big empty house, Laura approached me with a proposition. "Mom," she said one afternoon over coffee, "Austin and I are really struggling. We can barely afford our rent, and we want to start a family soon. What if we moved in with you? We could help you with the house, keep you company, and it would give us time to save money for our own place." I should have said no. God, looking back now, I should have said no. But I was lonely. The house felt like a mausoleum, and the idea of having Laura close, or maybe having grandchildren running through those rooms one day, made my heart ache with hope. So I said yes. They moved in 3 weeks later. At first, it was fine. It was even nice. Laura cooked dinners, Austin mowed the lawn. We watched movies together in the living room. I started to think maybe I'd been wrong about Austin. Maybe he was a good man who just had some bad luck. But then things started to change. It was small things at first. Conversations that would stop abruptly when I walked into a room. Doors that were suddenly locked when they'd never been locked before. Whispered phone calls that Austin would take outside. Laura started avoiding my eyes when she talked to me. They'd have entire conversations without words, just looks exchanged across the dinner table that I couldn't interpret. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that I was just an old woman who was too used to being alone, who didn't understand how young couples communicated. But deep down, in that place where mothers always know, I knew something was wrong. The house started to feel different. It no longer felt like mine. I'd find things moved, rearranged. My important documents would be in different places than where I'd left them. Once, I caught Austin in my bedroom, going through my dresser drawers. When I asked him what he was doing, he smiled that slippery smile and said he was looking for batteries. Batteries. In my dresser. I didn't believe him, but I didn't confront him either. I was afraid. Afraid of conflict, afraid of being wrong, afraid of pushing my daughter away. The late-night activities started about 2 months after they moved in. I'd hear people coming and going at strange hours. Footsteps on the stairs at 2, 3 in the morning. Car doors closing softly outside. Hushed voices in the basement. When I'd ask about it the next morning, Laura would say I must have been dreaming, that I was imagining things. She said it with such conviction that I started to doubt myself. Maybe my mind was going. Maybe I was becoming one of those elderly people who gets confused, who sees threats where there aren't any. But then the lies started piling up. Small ones at first. Austin said he was going to a job interview, but I saw him at the casino when I drove past. Laura told me she was working a double shift, but her coworker called the house looking for her. They said they were going to the grocery store and came back 3 hours later with no groceries. Each lie was tiny, explainable, but together they formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. I started feeling unsafe in my own home. The house that Gabriel and I had built, the house where I'd raised my daughter, where I'd planned to spend my final years in peace, it had become foreign to me. I'd lie awake at night, listening to sounds I couldn't identify, wondering what was happening under my own roof. I felt like a stranger in the place where I should have felt most secure. That's when I knew I had to do something. I couldn't keep living in this state of constant anxiety, constantly questioning my own sanity. I needed to know the truth, whatever it was. Even if it destroyed me, I needed to know. So I came up with a plan. Before I continue, please like this video, subscribe, and comment below telling me where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. And trust me, you're going to want to hear how this ends. I spent 3 days planning my fake trip. I needed it to be believable, natural, something that wouldn't raise suspicion. My sister, Linda, lived in Florida, and I hadn't visited her in over a year. It was the perfect cover. I started mentioning it casually at breakfast one morning. I was thinking, I said, stirring my coffee slowly, maybe I should visit Linda. She's been asking me to come down for months, and I haven't seen her since last Christmas. Laura looked up from her phone, and I saw something flash across her face. Was it excitement? Relief? It was gone too quickly for me to be sure. That's a great idea, Mom, she said, her voice just a bit too enthusiastic. You deserve a vacation. When were you thinking of going? Maybe next week? I suggested, watching both of them carefully. I could stay for a week or so, give you two some space. Austin set down his fork, and I saw him exchange a glance with Laura. It lasted maybe 2 seconds, but in those 2 seconds, I saw an entire conversation happen between them. Something unspoken, something that made my stomach turn. Yeah, that sounds perfect, Austin said, giving me that smile that never reached his eyes. You should definitely go. Laura and I can hold down the fort here. I called Linda that afternoon and told her what I was planning. She was confused at first, but when I explained my suspicions, she got quiet. Then she said something I'll never forget. Matilda, if you think something's wrong, it probably is. Trust your gut. It's kept you safe for 65 years. Over the next few days, I made a big show of preparing for my trip. I pulled out my old suitcase from the hall closet, the one with Gabriel's initials still faintly visible on the side. I did laundry, folded clothes, and made lists. I talked about what I'd do in Florida, the beaches I'd visit, the restaurants Linda wanted to take me to. Laura and Austin hung on every word, and with each passing day, I could feel their anticipation growing. They wanted me gone. That much was crystal clear. The night before I was supposed to leave, we all had dinner together. I'd made pot roast, Gabriel's favorite. As we ate, I watched my daughter and her husband, really watching them. Laura had my eyes, Gabriel's nose. I nursed her through every fever, held her through every heartbreak, taught her how to drive, how to balance a checkbook, and how to be a good person. How had we gotten here? How had we arrived at this place where she wanted me out of my own home? I'm going to miss you guys, I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, despite my suspicions and my fear, she was still my daughter. Some part of me hoped I was wrong about all of this. Laura reached across the table and squeezed my hand. We'll miss you too, Mom. But you'll have such a great time. You deserve this. Austin just nodded, his eyes already distant, already planning something I couldn't see. The next morning, I made a big production of leaving. I loaded my suitcase into my car, a 10-year-old Honda that Gabriel had bought me, and hugged them both goodbye. Laura held on a little too long, and for a moment, I felt like I had my little girl back. Then she pulled away, and the mask was back in place. Have a safe trip, Mom. Call us when you get there. I will, sweetheart. Take care of the house. I drove away slowly, checking my rearview mirror. I saw them standing in the driveway, watching me go. The moment I turned the corner, I saw Austin put his arm around Laura and lead her back inside quickly. Too quickly. Like they couldn't wait to get started on whatever they'd been planning. I didn't go to the airport. Instead, I drove to the other side of the neighborhood and parked my car in the garage of my elderly neighbor, George Patterson. George was 83, a widower who'd lived next door to Gabriel and me for over 20 years. I'd told him everything the day before, and God bless him, he hadn't hesitated to help me. You use whatever you need, Matilda, he'd said in his creaky voice. If your family's up to something, you've got every right to know. This is your house. I settled into George's guest bedroom, which had a perfect view of my house across the street. George had even set up his old binoculars for me on a TV tray by the window. I felt ridiculous, like some kind of spy in a bad movie. But I also felt determined. I was going to find out what was happening in my home. The first few hours were boring. Nothing happened. Laura and Austin moved around the house normally, doing ordinary things. I started to wonder if I'd made a terrible mistake, if I was just a paranoid old woman who'd created a conspiracy out of nothing. But then, around 2 in the afternoon, a car pulled up. A silver sedan I didn't recognize. A man got out, mid-30s, wearing a suit that looked expensive. He didn't knock. Austin opened the door before he even reached it, like he'd been watching for him. They disappeared inside, and 45 minutes later, the man left carrying a manila envelope. My heart started pounding. What was in that envelope? What kind of business was being conducted in my house without my knowledge? Over the next several hours, I watched 3 more people come and go. Each time, the pattern was the same. They'd arrive, Austin would let them in immediately, they'd stay for a while, and they'd leave with something, an envelope, a small box, papers. Laura stayed upstairs the entire time, never coming down, never acknowledging the visitors. As evening fell, I saw Austin carry several large bags into the house from his car. They looked heavy, and he kept glancing around nervously as he unloaded them. What was in those bags? My mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. I was so focused on watching that I didn't hear George come into the room until he put his hand on my shoulder. I nearly jumped out of my skin. "Sorry, didn't mean to startle you," he said softly. "But I wanted to tell you something. I've been seeing this for weeks, Matilda. People coming and going at all hours. Strange cars. Lots of activity late at night." I turned to look at him, and the sympathy in his old eyes nearly broke me. "Why didn't you tell me, George?" He sighed, his hand still on my shoulder. "I wasn't sure if you knew. I didn't want to interfere in the family business. But last week, when you told me about your suspicions, everything clicked. I should have said something sooner. I'm sorry. What else have you seen?" George pulled up a chair and sat down next to me. "Late-night visitors, mostly. After midnight, usually. They park down the street and walk up. Never the same people twice. Sometimes they're carrying things in, sometimes carrying things out. And your basement light, it's been on almost every night for the past month." My basement. Gabriel had finished it years ago, turned it into a workshop and storage area. What were they doing in my basement? "George," I said slowly, "what do you think they're doing?" He was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "I don't know, Matilda. But whatever it is, it's not legal. People don't conduct legitimate business at 3 in the morning." We sat in silence, both of us staring at my house as the sun set. Lights came on in various rooms. I could see Laura pass by the upstairs window. Austin appeared in the kitchen. From the outside, it looked like a normal evening in a normal home. But I knew better now. I knew that beneath that facade of normalcy, something rotten was happening. As the hours crept by, George made us sandwiches that I couldn't eat. My stomach was in knots. I kept watching, waiting, though I didn't know what I was waiting for. Then, around 11:30, George spoke again. His voice was low, almost ominous. "Wait until midnight, Matilda. That's when the real activity usually starts. Wait until midnight, you will see everything." Those words sent a chill down my spine. There was something in the way he said it, a certainty that made me believe that whatever I was about to witness would change everything. I checked my watch obsessively as the minutes ticked by. 11:40. 11:50. 11:55. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. George had turned off all his lights so we wouldn't be visible from the street. We sat in darkness, 2 old people spying on the life I'd built, watching it reveal its secrets. At exactly midnight, a van pulled up to my house. It was white, completely unmarked, no company logo or license plate visible from our angle. Two men got out, both wearing dark clothes. Austin opened the door before they could knock, just like he'd done all day. But this time, something was different. This time, Laura came downstairs. I could see her through the window, and even from across the street, even in the dim light, I could see she was nervous. The men started unloading boxes from the van. Big boxes, small boxes, all of them unmarked. They made trip after trip, carrying them into my house, into my basement. Austin and Laura helped, moving quickly, urgently. This wasn't casual. This was organized. Rehearsed. I stopped breathing. I literally stopped breathing as I watched this happen. My house, the house Gabriel and I had saved for, had sacrificed for, had built our entire lives in, was being used for something criminal. I didn't know what yet, but I knew it in my bones. This was bad. This was very, very bad. The unloading took almost 45 minutes. When the van finally pulled away, I saw Austin and Laura standing in the doorway. He said something to her, and she nodded. Then he pulled her close and kissed her forehead. It was such a tender gesture, so at odds with what I'd just witnessed, that it made me want to scream. That was my daughter. My baby girl. And she was involved in whatever this was. After they went back inside, lights came on in the basement. I could see the glow through the small windows near the ground. They were down there, doing God knows what with whatever had been in those boxes. George and I sat in stunned silence. Finally, he spoke. I've seen that van twice before. Both times around midnight. Both times, the same thing, loading or unloading boxes. What do you think it is? My voice came out as a whisper. Could be anything. Stolen goods. Drugs. Counterfeit merchandise. Whatever it is, Matilda, it's being run out of your house. They're using your home as a base of operations. The weight of that statement crushed me. They weren't just living in my house. They were using it. Using me. This whole time, the reason they'd wanted to move in, the reason they'd encouraged me to take this trip, it was all so they could operate more freely. I wasn't their mother, their family. I was their cover. Their dupe. I felt something break inside me at that moment. It wasn't a clean break, like snapping a twig. It was crumbling, like a wall that's been slowly weakening, finally giving way. Every sacrifice I'd made, every time I'd bitten my tongue about Austin, every moment I'd doubted my own instincts, it all came crashing down on me. George, I said, and my voice was shaking with rage and pain, I need to know exactly what they're doing. I need evidence. I need to see it for myself. He looked at me with concern. Matilda, maybe we should just call the police right now. And tell them what? That some boxes were delivered to my house? That my daughter and son-in-law had visitors? We need proof, George. Real proof. Otherwise, they'll just say I'm a confused old woman who doesn't understand what's happening in her own home. I could hear the bitterness in my voice, taste it like bile in my mouth. Because that's exactly what they'd been doing already, making me doubt myself, making me feel crazy. Well, I wasn't crazy. I was right. And I was going to prove it. We watched for another 2 hours. The basement lights stayed on the entire time. Whatever they were doing down there, it was taking a while. Finally, around 2:30 in the morning, the lights went off. I saw Laura and Austin trudge upstairs, exhausted. The house went dark. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat in that chair by George's window, watching my house, my home, and felt like I was watching a stranger's life. That wasn't my home anymore. It had been invaded, corrupted, turned into something I didn't recognize. As the sun started to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange that Gabriel had always loved, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I wasn't going to be a victim in my own life. I was going to fight back. But I needed help. I needed someone who understood the legal implications of what was happening, someone who could guide me through what to do next. I thought of Linda Theodore, a lawyer I'd worked for at that law firm 40 years ago. We'd stayed in touch over the years, exchanging Christmas cards, occasional phone calls. She was retired now, but she still practiced part-time, taking on cases that interested her. And she owed me. I'd once helped her through a divorce that had nearly destroyed her, staying late to help organize files, listening to her cry, being the friend she needed. I called her at 7 in the morning from George's phone. "Linda? It's Matilda Jameson. I'm so sorry to call you this early, but I need your help. Something's happening in my house, something illegal, and I don't know what to do." To her credit, Linda didn't ask questions. She just said, "I'll be there in an hour." "Where are you?" When she arrived, I told her everything. I showed her what I'd witnessed. George corroborated the stories of late-night activity. Linda listened to it all with the focused intensity one remembered from our working days together, taking notes, asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at me with an expression that was part sympathy, part outrage. "Matilda, this is serious. Based on what you've described, your daughter and son-in-law are likely using your home to receive and distribute stolen goods, or possibly as a hub for some kind of fraud operation. The fact that they encouraged you to leave, that they're operating at night, that they have multiple people coming and going, this isn't amateur hour. This is organized." Hearing her say it out loud, in those stark legal terms, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. My daughter was a criminal. My baby girl, the one I'd rocked to sleep and taught to read and walked down the aisle at her wedding, she was breaking the law. In my house. Using me. "What do I do?" I asked, and I hated how small my voice sounded. Linda leaned forward. "First, we document everything. Every person who comes and goes, every car, every detail." "George, do you have a camera?" He nodded and produced an old digital camera from a drawer. "Good. We photograph everyone who visits. We keep a log. And then, Matilda, we set a trap." "What kind of trap?" "You're going to come home. But you're going to come home with backup. I'm going to arrange for a building inspector to do a routine inspection of your property. We'll cite some made-up ordinance about inspecting homes over a certain age. They won't be able to refuse without raising suspicion. And when that inspector sees whatever they're hiding in your basement, we'll have grounds to bring in the authorities." It was risky. If Laura and Austin got suspicious, they might destroy evidence or disappear. But it was also brilliant. We'd catch them red-handed, and they'd have no warning. "There's one more thing," Linda said gently. "Matilda, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that Laura might face criminal charges. If she's actively participating in whatever this is, she could go to jail. Are you ready for that?" Was I ready? Ready to see my daughter arrested? Ready to potentially testify against her? No. I would never be ready for that. But I also couldn't let this continue. I couldn't let them destroy everything Gabriel and I had built. I couldn't let them turn our home into a criminal enterprise. "I'm ready," I lied. "Let's do it." Over the next 2 days, George and I documented everything. We took photos of every visitor, every car, every box that went in or out. We created a detailed log with times and descriptions. The more we watched, the more disturbed I became. This wasn't some small-time operation. This was big. Professional. And my daughter was right in the middle of it. On the 3rd day, Linda called. "It's all set up. The inspector will arrive tomorrow at 10 in the morning. I want you to come home tonight, around 8. Act normal, act tired from your trip. Don't give them any reason to suspect anything. Can you do that? Yes, I said, and this time I meant it. I was done being scared. I was done being manipulated. It was time to go back home. That evening, I packed up my things at George's house and thanked him for his help. He hugged me, this frail old man who'd been stronger than I deserved. You're doing the right thing, Matilda. Your Gabriel would be proud of you. Those words almost broke me. Would Gabriel be proud? Or would he be heartbroken that it had come to this? I'd never know. All I could do was move forward. I drove my car back to my house at exactly 8 o'clock. My hands were shaking as I pulled into the driveway. Laura's car was there, and Austin's truck. They were home. I took a deep breath, grabbed my suitcase, and walked to the front door. I used my key to let myself in. Hello? I'm home. Laura appeared at the top of the stairs, and I saw pure shock flash across her face before she covered it with a smile. Mom. You're back early. We weren't expecting you until next week. I set down my suitcase and smiled back, though it felt like my face might crack from the effort. Linda came down with the flu, so I decided to come home. I didn't want to get sick. How have things been here? Austin emerged from the kitchen, and I saw him exchange a panicked look with Laura. Good. Let them panic. Everything's been fine, he said carefully. The house is all in one piece. You must be exhausted from the drive. I am, I agreed. I think I'll just head to bed early. Long day tomorrow. I could feel them watching me as I climbed the stairs. I could feel their fear, their uncertainty. They were trying to figure out if I knew anything, if I suspected anything. I kept my face neutral, kept my movements normal. In my bedroom, the bedroom I'd shared with Gabriel for over 30 years, I sat on the edge of the bed and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. The anger, the betrayal, the grief. I cried silently into my pillow, mourning the daughter I thought I had, mourning the future I thought we'd share. But I didn't cry for long. I couldn't afford to fall apart. Not yet. Tomorrow, everything will come to light. Tomorrow, I'd know the full extent of what they'd done. I barely slept. I heard them up late, whispering urgently. I heard footsteps on the stairs, the basement door opening and closing. They were moving things, hiding things. They knew something was wrong. They just didn't know what. The next morning, I came downstairs at 8 o'clock, dressed and ready. Laura and Austin were already in the kitchen, both looking exhausted and nervous. Morning, I said cheerfully. I'm making pancakes. You two want some? They declined. Said they'd already eaten. I could see bags under their eyes. They'd been up all night, I'd bet anything on it. At exactly 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Austin jumped. Who could that be? I'll get it, I said, moving toward the door before either of them could stop me. I opened the door to find a man in his 40s holding a clipboard. Behind him stood Linda, also holding official-looking papers. And behind her, I could see a police car parked discreetly down the street. Good morning, Mrs. Jameson? I'm Inspector Williams from the County Building Department. We're conducting routine inspections of homes built before 1990 to ensure they meet current safety codes. This should only take about an hour. Is now a good time? I heard Laura gasp behind me. I heard Austin curse under his breath. But there was nothing they could do. If they refused the inspection, it would look suspicious. If they let him in, he'd see whatever they'd been hiding. Of course, I said, stepping aside. Come right in. What happened next felt like a dream. Inspector Williams walked through the house with his clipboard, checking outlets, looking at the roof structure, examining the windows. Linda stayed in the living room with Laura, Austin, and me, making small talk that no one was listening to. Then the inspector asked to see the basement. I watched Austin's face go pale. The basement? Is that really necessary? It's just storage down there. Standard procedure, sir. I need to check the foundation and the electrical panel. Won't take but a few minutes. Austin looked at Laura. Laura looked at me. And in that moment, she knew. I saw recognition dawn in her eyes. She knew that I knew. Mom, she whispered, what did you do? I didn't answer. I just followed the inspector down the basement stairs. What we found there exceeded even my worst fears. The basement, Gabriel's workshop, the place where he'd built Laura's first bookshelf, where he'd refinished furniture, where we'd stored Christmas decorations and old photo albums, had been converted into a warehouse. Boxes lined every wall, stacked floor to ceiling. Tables were set up in the center of the room, covered with laptops, printers, and what looked like sophisticated computer equipment. The inspector opened one of the boxes. Inside were hundreds of credit cards, all in different names. Another box contained social security cards. Another had blank IDs. My daughter and son-in-law weren't just receiving stolen goods. They were running an identity theft operation. From my basement. In the house that Gabriel built. I felt my knees go weak. Linda caught my arm, steadied me. Mrs. Jameson, are you aware of what's in your basement? The inspector asked, though his tone made it clear he already knew the answer. No, I whispered. I had no idea. He pulled out his radio. We need police at this location immediately. We've got a major identity theft operation here. Everything happened very fast after that. Police flooded my house. Laura and Austin were read their rights. Laura was crying, reaching for me, calling my name. Mom, please, let me explain. Mom, we were desperate. We needed money. Mom, please. I turned away from her. I couldn't look at her. If I looked at her, I'd break. Austin wasn't crying. He was angry. You had no right, he screamed at me as they put him in handcuffs. This is our house too. You can't just spy on us. You can't. It's my house. I shouted back, and all the rage I'd been holding in came pouring out. My house that I worked for. That my husband died. You used me. You used our home. You made me feel crazy. You made me doubt myself. You betrayed everything, and you dare tell me I had no right? A police officer gently moved me back. Mrs. Jameson, please step aside. I watched them take my daughter away in handcuffs. I watched them load box after box of evidence into police vans. I watched them dismantle the operation that had been running under my roof for God knows how long. Linda stayed with me through all of it. When the police finally left, when my house was finally quiet again, I walked down to the basement and just stared at the empty space. They'd taken everything, the boxes, the equipment, even Gabriel's old workbench as evidence because it had been used as part of their operation. How long? I asked Linda. How long were they doing this? Based on the amount of merchandise and equipment, I'd estimate at least 6 months. Probably longer. 6 months. Maybe even before they'd moved in. Maybe that had been the plan all along, move in with the old lady, use her house, use her trust, bleed her dry. What happens now? I asked. They'll be arraigned, probably tomorrow. Bail will be set, though given the severity of the charges, it'll be high. Identity theft, fraud, conspiracy, they're looking at serious prison time, Matilda. Federal charges. This isn't something that goes away with a plea deal. Good, I said, and I meant it. Let them face consequences. Let them understand what they've done. But as I said it, I felt something inside me die. Because no matter how angry I was, no matter how betrayed I felt, that was still my daughter sitting in a jail cell. That was still the baby I'd carried, the child I'd raised, the person I'd loved more than my own life. The next few weeks were a nightmare. The story hit the local news: elderly woman's home used for major identity theft operation. My phone rang constantly, reporters, neighbors, people I barely knew, all wanting details, wanting the story. I stopped answering. Laura and Austin were denied bail. Too much of a flight risk, the judge said. Good. Let them sit in jail and think about what they'd done. Laura wrote me letters from jail. Dozens of them. I couldn't read them at first. I'd open the envelope, see her handwriting, the handwriting I'd taught her when she was 6 years old, and my hands would shake so badly I'd have to put the letter away. Finally, 3 weeks after their arrest, I forced myself to read one. Dear Mom. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to understand. But I need you to know that I never meant for things to go this far. It started small. Austin had some debts from gambling, and we needed quick money. Someone he knew offered us a way to make cash fast. I knew it was wrong, Mom. I knew it from the beginning. But I was scared of losing him, scared of being alone, scared of failing. So I said yes. When we asked to move in with you, I told myself it was for the right reasons. I told myself we really were struggling, that we really would save money and move out. But Austin convinced me we could use the basement, that you'd never know, that we'd make enough money to get out of debt and then stop. Just a few months, he said. Just until we got back on our feet. But it never stopped. Every time I wanted to quit, Austin would say we needed just a little more. And then it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about not getting caught. It was about keeping the secret. Every day, I'd wake up and look at you at breakfast and hate myself. Every night, I'd hear you walking around upstairs while we were in the basement, and I'd feel sick. When you said you were going to visit Aunt Linda, Austin was so relieved. He said we could finally work without worrying. But I couldn't sleep, Mom. The whole time you were supposed to be gone, I couldn't sleep because I kept thinking about what we'd become. About what I'd become. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm sorry for betraying you. I'm sorry for using your home, your trust, your love. I'm sorry for making you doubt yourself. I'm sorry for everything. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. Your daughter, Laura. I read that letter 3 times, and each time I felt something different. First anger, how dare she try to explain it away? Then sadness, my poor, weak daughter who'd lost herself trying to please a man who didn't deserve her. Then nothing. Just emptiness. I didn't write back. The trial happened 6 months later. Linda advised me that I didn't have to attend, that my testimony could be given via deposition. But I went. I needed to see this through to the end. The courtroom was cold and impersonal. Laura and Austin sat at the defendant's table in orange jumpsuits. Austin looked defiant, angry. Laura looked broken. When they brought me up to testify, Laura started crying. The judge had to call for order. I told them everything. About the suspicion, about the fake trip, about watching from George's house. About the midnight delivery. About finding the basement full of stolen identities, of equipment used to destroy people's lives. I kept my voice steady, factual. I didn't cry. I wouldn't give them my tears. When the prosecutor asked me how I felt about what my daughter had done, I finally looked at Laura. Really looked at her. I feel like the daughter I raised died somewhere along the way, I said quietly. The Laura I knew would never have done this. She would never have used her own mother this way. She would never have put innocent people at risk for money. So either I never really knew my daughter at all, or I lost her long before she was arrested. Either way, the person I loved is gone. Laura sobbed openly at that. The judge had to recess because she couldn't stop crying. The verdict came back after 3 days of deliberation. Guilty on all counts. Austin got 12 years in federal prison. Laura got 8, with the possibility of parole after 5 due to her cooperation and her lack of prior criminal history. 8 years. My daughter would spend 8 years in prison. She was 32 years old. By the time she got out, she'd be 40. Middle-aged. Her youth is gone, wasted behind bars. After the sentencing, they gave her a chance to speak. She stood up, shaking, and looked right at me. "Mom, I know I can never make this right. I know I destroyed everything. But please know that I love you. I've always loved you. And I'm so sorry for hurting you. You deserved so much better than what I gave you." Then they took her away. And that was it. My daughter was gone. The house felt haunted after that. Every room held memories that had been corrupted. The kitchen where we'd had that last dinner together before my fake trip. The living room where they'd pretended everything was fine. The basement, God, the basement. I couldn't even go down there without feeling sick. I thought about selling. Linda suggested it might be good for me to start fresh somewhere new. But where would I go? This house was all I had left of Gabriel. Selling it would feel like erasing the last piece of my life that had meant something. So I stayed. But I changed things. I cleaned out the basement completely, had it professionally sanitized. I threw away everything Laura and Austin had left behind, their clothes, their belongings, every trace of them. I repainted every room in the house, different colors than before. I rearranged furniture. I made it different, because it could never be the same. George continued to check on me daily. Linda visited once a week for coffee. They became my lifeline, these two people who'd helped me through the worst experience of my life. 6 months after the trial, Laura started calling me from prison. The first few times, I didn't accept the calls. What could she possibly say that would matter? But eventually, I picked up. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe some small, stubborn piece of maternal love that refused to die. "Mom?" Her voice sounded small, childlike. "Thank you for answering. What do you want, Laura?" I wanted to tell you that I'm in therapy here. The prison offers counseling, and I've been going. I'm trying to understand why I did what I did. Why do I let Austin manipulate me? Why was I so weak? And have you figured it out? Some of it. I was scared of being alone. I attached my worth to being loved by him. When he started getting involved in illegal things, I should have left. But I was afraid that if I did, no one else would want me. That I'd end up alone and pathetic. So I stayed. And I followed him deeper and deeper into this hole until I couldn't see the way out anymore. I was quiet for a long moment. You know what's funny, Laura? I was alone after your father died. Completely alone in this big house, with nothing but memories and grief. And it was hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through. But I was never pathetic. Being alone doesn't make you pathetic. Betraying the people who love you, that's pathetic. She was crying again. You're right. Mom, you're right about everything. I'm so sorry. I know you are. But sorry doesn't give me back those months of feeling crazy in my own home. Sorry, don't give me back my daughter. The one I thought I had. Is there any chance at all that you might forgive me someday? I thought about that question for a long time. Could I forgive her? Should I? I don't know, I finally said. Maybe. Someday. But not today. Today, I'm still too angry. Too hurt. You have to understand, Laura, you didn't just betray me. You made me doubt my own mind. You made me feel unsafe in the place where I should have felt most secure. You used everything your father and I built as a cover for criminal activity. How do I forgive that? I don't know, she whispered. I guess I just hope that time will help. Maybe after I've served my sentence, after I've tried to become better, there might be a chance for us. Maybe, I said. But I didn't believe it. We talked occasionally after that. Short conversations, surface-level updates. She told me about prison life, about her therapy, about the other women she'd met. I told her about the weather, about George's health, about the garden I'd planted. We never talked about anything that mattered. A year after her sentencing, Austin filed for divorce from prison. He blamed Laura for everything, claiming she'd manipulated him into the identity theft scheme. Laura was devastated. She called me crying, and for the first time in months, I felt something other than anger toward her. He was never worth it, Laura. He was never worth any of this. I know that now. But I destroyed my life for him, Mom. I destroyed our relationship with him. And he couldn't even stand by me when things got hard. That's what weak men do, I told her. They use people and then discard them. Your father wasn't like that. Your father was strong, loyal, and true. Austin was always going to let you down. I just wish you'd seen it sooner. Me too, Mom. God, me too. 2 years into her sentence, Laura was moved to a minimum security facility for good behavior. She started taking college classes online, working toward a degree in social work. She said she wanted to help other women avoid the mistakes she'd made. I thought that was ironic, my daughter, the convicted felon, wanting to counsel people. But at least she was trying to do something constructive with her time. George died the following winter. Heart attack, sudden and quick. The way he would have wanted to go. I found him in his house when he didn't answer his door for our usual morning coffee. He looked peaceful, sitting in his chair by the window, the binoculars still on the TV tray beside him. I sobbed at his funeral. This man who'd barely known me, who'd helped me when I needed it most, who'd been my friend when I had no one else. He'd saved me, in a way. He'd given me the strength to confront what was happening in my home. Laura sent a letter of condolence from prison. She'd never met George, but she knew what he'd meant to me. I'm sorry for your loss, Mom. I know he was a good friend to you. I'm glad you had him when I failed you so completely. I kept that letter. I don't know why. 3 years in, something shifted in me. I was organizing the attic, going through old boxes, and I found Laura's baby book. Photos of her first steps, her first birthday, her first day of school. A lock of her hair from her first haircut. A Mother's Day card she'd made me when she was 7, "You're the best mommy in the world." I sat on the attic floor surrounded by these memories and cried. Because that little girl had been real. She loved me. She'd been good and sweet and full of potential. Somewhere along the way, she'd lost herself. But she'd been real once. I called the prison that evening and added money to Laura's commissary account. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't an absolution. But it was an acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that despite everything, she was still my daughter. That some small part of me still loved the child she'd been, even if I couldn't forgive the adult she'd become. When Laura called next, she was crying. Mom, thank you. Thank you for the money. Thank you for not giving up on me completely. I'm still angry, Laura. I'm still hurt. That hasn't changed. I know. I don't expect it to. But thank you anyway. 4 years into her sentence, Laura became eligible for a work release program. She got a job at a nonprofit that helped formerly incarcerated people find housing and employment. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "How is it?" I asked during one of our calls. "It's good, Mom. It's really good. I help people who've made mistakes, like me. People who are trying to rebuild their lives. It makes me feel like maybe I can do something good with the mess I've made." "That's good, Laura. I'm glad you're finding purpose. Would you ever want to visit me? I know it's a lot to ask, but I'd really like to see you." It's been 4 years. 4 years. Has it really been that long since I'd seen my daughter in person? Since I'd watched them take her away in handcuffs? "Let me think about it," I said. I did think about it. For weeks, I thought about nothing else. Could I face her? Could I sit across from her in some prison visiting room and look at what she'd become? Linda, as always, gave me good advice. "Matilda, you don't owe her anything. But you do owe yourself closure. Whether that closure comes from visiting her or from never seeing her again, that's your choice. But make sure it's what you need, not what she needs." In the end, I decided to go. Not for her, but for me. Because I needed to see if there was anything left of my daughter worth saving. The prison was exactly what you'd expect: cold, institutional, depressing. I went through security, was searched, and was told the rules. No touching except a brief hug at the beginning and end of the visit. No passing items. Stay in your seat. When they brought Laura out, I almost didn't recognize her. She'd lost weight, looked older than her 36 years. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry. She looked tired. But when she saw me, her whole face lit up with such joy and relief that it physically hurt to see. "Mom," she breathed, rushing over to hug me. I let her, stiffly. She smelled like industrial soap and something else, the smell of institution, of lost freedom. We sat down across from each other at a small table. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. We just looked at each other, trying to see past the years and the hurt to whatever remained. "Thank you for coming," Laura finally said. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure either." "You look good, Mom." "Tired, but good." "You look terrible," I said bluntly. "Prison doesn't suit you." She laughed, a bitter sound. No. No, it doesn't. But I deserve to be here." "I know that." "Yes, you do." We talked for an hour. She told me more about her therapy, about the work she was doing, about her plans for when she got out. I told her about the house, about the changes I'd made, about continuing on with life. It was strange, surreal, sitting there having this normal conversation in such an abnormal place. Near the end of the visit, Laura reached across the table like she wanted to hold my hand, then remembered the rules and pulled back. "Mom, I know I've said this 100 times, but I need to say it again. I am so deeply sorry for what I did to you. I've had 4 years to think about it, to really understand the damage I caused. I didn't just commit crimes. I betrayed the person who loved me most in the world. I took advantage of your grief, your loneliness, your trust. There's no excuse for that. There's no making that right. All I can do is try to be better, to be the person you raised me to be. Even if it's too late." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't seen before. Genuine remorse. Genuine change. She wasn't the same person who'd been arrested 4 years ago. Prison had stripped away her defenses, her excuses, her ability to hide from what she'd done. "It is too late," I said quietly. "Too late to undo the damage. Too late to give me back those months of peace I should have had in my own home. Too late to restore my trust. But maybe it's not too late for you to become someone I could respect again. Not love, not yet. Maybe not ever. But respect. Tears streamed down her face. That's more than I deserve. Yes, I agreed. It is. When the visit ended and I hugged her goodbye, she clung to me just a moment too long. I felt her shoulders shake with silent sobs. Then I pulled away, and the guard led her back through the door. She looked back once, and I saw in her eyes all the loss, all the regret, all the what might have beens. I drove home in silence, my emotions too complicated to name. I felt drained, but also somehow lighter. Seeing her, talking to her, it had given me something I didn't know I needed, confirmation that my daughter was still in there somewhere, buried under the mistakes and the consequences. Laura was released after serving 5 years of her 8-year sentence. She called me the day she got out, from a halfway house in the city. I'm out, Mom. I'm really out. I know. Your lawyer called me last week to let me know. I wasn't sure if you'd want to know. I did. There was a long pause. I'd like to see you sometime. When you're ready. No pressure. I know I have a lot to prove first. Yes, you do. I got accepted into graduate school. Online program for social work. And I'm still working at the nonprofit. I'm building a life, Mom. A real one this time. One I can be proud of. Good. That's good, Laura. We hung up, and I sat in the silence of my house, the house that had been through so much, that had witnessed so much pain and betrayal and ultimately, justice. Did I forgive her? No. Not completely. Maybe I never would. The wound was too deep, the betrayal too profound. But I was no longer consumed by anger. Time and distance had dulled the sharp edges of my rage, leaving behind something more complex. Disappointment. Sadness. And maybe, just maybe, the tiniest seed of hope that my daughter could become someone worth knowing again. 6 months after her release, Laura asked if she could visit me at the house. I said no. I wasn't ready for that. Having her in this space, the space she'd violated so thoroughly, it was too much. Instead, we met at a coffee shop in town. Neutral territory. She'd gained back some weight, and looked healthier. She was wearing normal clothes, jeans and a sweater, and had cut her hair short. She looked different. Older, but also somehow younger, like she'd shed a skin. We talked about safe things. Her job, her classes, the weather. Neither of us mentioned the past. It sat between us like a ghost, but we both ignored it. As we were leaving, Laura stopped me. Mom, I know you may never forgive me. I've accepted that. But I want you to know that I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you. Even if you never see it, even if we never have a real relationship again, I'm going to be better. For me, but also for you. Because you deserved a better daughter than I was. I looked at her, this woman who'd once been my baby, my little girl, my everything. Time will tell, Laura. Time will tell. That was a year ago. We still meet occasionally for coffee. Our relationship is nothing like it was, it never will be. But it's something. A fragile, careful something built on the ruins of what we lost. I'm 70 years old now. 5 years have passed since that night when I watched from George's window and saw my world fall apart. 5 years since I learned that the people you love most can hurt you deepest. 5 years since I had to choose between protecting myself and protecting my daughter. I still live in the house Gabriel and I built. I've made it mine again, slowly, room by room, memory by memory. It will never be what it was, but it's home. My home. No one can take that from me again. Laura is doing well, from what I can see. She graduated with her master's degree last month. I didn't attend the ceremony, but I sent a card. Small steps. That's all we can manage, small, careful steps towards something that might eventually resemble forgiveness. People ask me sometimes if I regret what I did. If I wish I'd just ignored my suspicions, let them continue, preserving the illusion of family. The answer is no. Never. What they were doing was wrong, and allowing it to continue would have made me complicit. More than that, it would have meant living in fear and doubt in my own home for the rest of my life. I couldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. This house, this beautiful, painful house, it's been through everything with me. It held my joy and my grief. It sheltered my family and witnessed their betrayal. It stands as a testament to hard work, to love, and ultimately, to survival. I'm still here. Still standing. Still fighting to find peace in the space that holds so many ghosts. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all any of us can do, survive what tries to break us and keep moving forward, one painful step at a time. My name is Matilda Jameson, and I am 65 years old. And this is how my world shattered in a single night, and how I pieced it back together, one broken fragment at a time. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more real stories like this one and click on the image showing on your screen to watch another real story. Trust me, it's more crazier and heartwarming than you can ever imagine. See you in the next story.